A statute is a formal written law enacted by a legislative body representing the will of the legislature. Maxwell defines statutes as the will of the legislature. Interpretation is a fundamental legal process of determining the meaning and application of statutes or legal provisions that are often considered the backbone of any legal system. These legislative enactments serve as the primary source of law. Salmon describes the interpretation of statutes as the process by which courts seek to understand the legislature's intent through the authoritative forms in which it is expressed. Statutory construction, also known as the interpretation of statutes, is a fundamental legal process aimed at determining the meaning and application of statutes. Statutes must be read as a whole. It is essential to read a statute as a whole to comprehend the legislature's intentions. Isolating a provision may hinder the understanding of the legislative purpose. The judiciary bears the responsibility of interpreting existing statutes and laws, including the Constitution and delegated legislations, ensuring fair and uniform application of the law. To comprehend a statute, courts utilize various tools and techniques adhering to a set of principles and rules. Generally, courts interpret statutes according to their plain and ordinary meaning, unless ambiguity exists or such an interpretation would lead to an incorrect result. In some cases, courts may consider legislative history such as committee reports and debates to aid in understanding the statute's meaning. Types of statutes. Perpetual statute. A statute is considered to be perpetual when no specific time limit is set for its existence until repealed, either in an express or implied manner. Example: the Indian Penal Code 1860 is considered a perpetual statute because it does not have a specific expiration date mentioned within its provisions. Temporary statute. A temporary statute has a defined term unless repealed earlier, usually outlined within the statute itself. For example, Finance Act is an annual statute that gives effect to the financial proposals of the government for the upcoming fiscal year. Each Finance Act is temporary in nature as it applies only to the specific financial year for which it is enacted. Mandatory statutes. Mandatory statutes impose strict requirements demanding precise adherence for the valid compliance. Failure to follow these statutes often result in legal consequences. For example, a statute that mandates filing tax returns by a specific date illustrates a mandatory provision, as non-compliance may lead to penalties or legal action. The use of word shall generally imposes a mandatory duty. If a statute states that a party shall perform a certain act, it means that the act is required and there is no discretion involved. Directory statutes. Directory statutes provide guidance without imposing strict obligations. They allow more flexibility in compliance. An example is a statute suggesting a time frame for submitting certain reports but not specifying penalties for a slight delay. In such cases, substantial compliance rather than strict adherence is generally sufficient to meet the statutory requirements. Codifying statutes. Codifying statutes organize and arrange existing laws on a particular subject into a comprehensive and accessible legal code, providing ease of reference. For example, Hindu Succession Act 1956 codifies the laws related to the succession and inheritance among Hindus. Consolidating statutes. Consolidating statutes merge and unify various laws on a specific topic, streamlining legal provisions and eliminating redundancy. Example: the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 consolidates and organizes the laws and procedures relating to criminal matters in India. Declaratory statutes. These statutes clarify existing laws without making substantive changes, often enacted to remove doubts or uncertainties in legal interpretations and providing certainty and guidance. Example: the Income Tax Amendment Acts, which add explanation to the existing provisions of Income Tax Act 1961. Enabling statutes. Enabling statutes authorize the creation of administrative agencies and grant them specific powers, outlining the scope and limitations of their authority to regulate and implement laws. Example, the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 is an enabling statute that authorizes the establishment and functioning of the Reserve Bank of India, granting it specific powers to regulate the country's monetary and financial system. Disabling statutes. It is the opposite of enabling statutes. Here the rights are restricted and individual is refrained from doing something which otherwise would have been legal. Penal statutes. Penal statutes define offences against the public and prescribe punishments. For example, the Indian Penal Code 1860 includes penal statutes that define offences such as theft and murder, prescribing punishments for these criminal acts. Taxing statutes. Taxing statutes outline rules related to taxation, specifying rates, exemptions, and procedures for the imposition and collection of taxes. Example, the Income Tax Act 1961 is a taxing statute that outlines rules related to the imposition and collection of income tax in India, specifying rates, exemptions, and procedures. Explanatory statutes. These statutes elucidate the meaning or intention behind existing laws, aiding in the interpretation of legal provisions and ensuring a clear understanding of the legislative intent. Example, the General Clauses Act 1897 serves as an explanatory statute, providing definitions and rules of interpretation applicable to various legal provisions across different laws in India. Amending statutes. Amending statutes modify or change specific provisions of existing laws, adapting legal frameworks to evolving societal needs or rectifying perceived shortcomings in the law. Example, the Companies Amendment Act 2020 is an amending statute that introduced changes to the Companies Act 2013 to adapt corporate governance regulations and address emerging issues. Repealing statutes. Repealing statutes annul or abolish existing laws either in whole or in part, rendering them no longer applicable and removing them from legal framework. Example, the Repealing and Amending Act 2019 is an act that included provisions for repealing 58 obsolete statutes. Do like, share and subscribe if you liked the video.